This is a movie about land access, an issue that is emerging as one of the primary barriers preventing a generation of new farmers from creating a revitalized local food system. Local food systems create real wealth, social, ecological, and financial wealth. New farmers are the foundation of sustainable local food systems, and they need land in order to do their work. In this film, we visit with 3 graduates of Everdale's Farmers Growing Farmers Planner course. They have been able to kickstart their farming careers without buying their own land. Each of them is working with landowners who share their vision of a sustainable local food system. We hope that their stories will inspire more new farmers. We also hope they will inspire policymakers and others to work towards long-term land access solutions.
These are some of the sweetest cherries you'll have. The ones that are like see-through yellow.
The first farmer we visit is Erica Lemieux. Erica graduated from Everdale's Farmers Growing Farmers Planner course in 2011 and launched her farm immediately afterwards. She is now operating her farm out of backyards in the High Park neighborhood in Toronto. Erica delivers all of her produce to market by bicycle and is committed to growing healthy organic food for her community.
Hi, my name is Erica Lemieux and I'm from City Seed Farms. So I grew up in the west end of Toronto. My family is from the city. I had gardening experience growing up a little bit. My mom used to keep a tomato garden, and she would actually take a mini trip from our primary school. We'd go like 5 or 6 of us, and she would tell us about how to grow tomatoes. Other than our little tomato garden, not much farming experience growing up. My background at school is agricultural and environmental science, so I was introduced to, integrated pest management. I had courses where we'd be in the greenhouse each week, so there was a little bit of a primer there, but again, very fragmented. I would not call myself a farmer by any means before I started City Seed Farms. What originally sparked my interest in farming in the city was actually a U of T conference. It was called the Food Unconference, and we were all sitting in groups, like in little breakout sessions, and they said for us to turn to the person beside us and ask them what they're up to. Why are they here at this Food Unconference? And so I turned to the girl beside me, and who's now a friend of mine, and said, "What do you do?" And she said, "I farm in backyards in Toronto." And I was just blown away, and I said, "Where do I sign up?" Just didn't even skip a beat. And from that moment on, just having it on my radar that was even a possibility, that informed all of my decisions from there on out.
The second farmer we visit is Tony Neal. Tony graduated from Everdale's Farmers Growing Farmers Planner course in 2008. Tony's farm is located an hour northeast of Toronto on 10 acres of rolling fields and forest. He grows mixed organic vegetables and raises heritage breeds of pigs on pasture.
My name's Tony, and I'm from Wheelbarrow Farm. I grew up in the suburbs of Toronto, Brampton and Burlington, and then when I was 18 I moved to the city and lived in Toronto for about 10 years. My family doesn't have any background really in farming in the last several generations, but there's always an interest. My mom always had a vegetable garden, and that's how I guess I got started. I went to school at the University of Toronto, and I took political science there, and I guess it was there that I became interested in food politics, and from food politics it went to farming. There were several factors that motivated me to get into farming. First and foremost, I was looking for a career. I guess I had done several different jobs and I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, and farming was one of the ones on the list. I tell people that when I was around 27, I wrote a list of all jobs and then started crossing them off when I didn't like them, and the farming was maybe the one left that was still on the list. So I applied to go to a farm school on the West Coast, and I was accepted, and I went there. It's called Linnea Ecological Gardening Program, and I went there 4 or 5 years ago for an 8-month program. And while I was there, it's about half the time you're in a classroom setting and half the time you're out in the field, so it was a good balance of school and hands-on learning. And there was a big focus on permaculture as a design philosophy, so that's how I was exposed to that. I didn't have much farm experience before I was going to enter into this venture, and it just so happened that Farmers Growing Farmers started after my year-long stint at Linnea and just before my farming was about to begin. So it was a perfect course at a perfect time to get some new ideas, to make a business plan, to figure out suppliers, to talk to local farmers.
The third farmer we visit is Angie Koch. Angie graduated from Everdale's Farmers Growing Farmers New Farmer Internship in 2007 and the Planner course in 2008. Angie operates an organic vegetable farm west of Waterloo, Ontario. She sells her produce at the Kitchener Farmers Market as well as to farm members through her community shared agriculture project.
My name's Angie Koch. I grew up in the suburbs of Hamilton in Dundas, but both my parents come from farming backgrounds in sort of an extended way. My dad grew up on a dairy farm, and when he was 16, his dad offered him a farm and he turned it down. My mom's parents had a farm, but they had sold it and sort of lived in the country, but not on much land by the time she was born. So they grew up rurally, but yeah, I grew up in the suburbs for sure. I went to university for a program in social development studies, which is like a community development and social work kind of program, and did a 1-year post-grad diploma in agri-college in ecosystem restoration, which for me was a bit of a link in a different direction. There was some soil science and water and that type of course, and I sort of got interested in agriculture indirectly through that experience. Ended up doing a bunch of urban agriculture work for a nonprofit organization where I was hired afterwards, and realized that the agriculture part of my work was the thing that I loved most, and sort of decided to take my community development background in an agriculture direction, and that's kind of how I ended up doing CSA farming. My first, big experience was doing an internship at Everdale, and that was the summer of 2007, and then I started farming here the year after that. So when I was starting to farm, I was at Everdale Organic Farm and Environmental Learning Center for my internship. Gavin Dandy, the farm manager, was really supportive in terms of encouraging all of us who were interning to really seriously consider starting up our own farm businesses, encouraging us to identify what our farm dreams were, and whether it was realistic to make that happen. And I think I really took that seriously.
Next, we'll hear about how our farmers acquired their land, the steps they went through in contacting the landowners, and some of the notable features of their land agreements. We'll also meet the landowners and find out what motivated them to share their property with these new farmers.
The way I started looking for land was I created a brochure that said City Seed Farms, bringing it to the table. And then you flipped it open and there was a picture of me waving, and it said, "Hi, I'm your neighbor, Erica Lemieux. Would you like to see your backyard turn into a productive vegetable garden? If so, contact me soon because I need to get the plots prepared for next spring." So this was in the fall. So I just dropped those off door to door, probably about 100 on my street and the 2 neighboring streets. And then I waited. And within 48 hours, I had 7 landowners call and just say, "Come on over and check it out. If you like what you see, it's yours."
Pretty much the weekend I got back from Linnea, my dad and I came to see this property, and we had talked about it while I was there for the 8 months, about maybe coming together he was looking for a house in this area and I was looking for somewhere to farm, because I thought that that is something that I'd like to do, and came together really quickly. The weekend I got back, we looked at the house, and it wasn't soon after that that we put an offer on the property.
Because in university, some friends and I had this garden on the land of Tom and Mary Musselman, who were this amazingly supportive couple who would encourage us to try growing things and been very tolerant of our weeds, and just been like this really supportive couple. They're really the only people that I knew who had land in the Waterloo area. So I sort of went back to Everdale after this walk with this one card in my back pocket, which was, call Tom Musselman. So that's what I did. I called him up and I thought, well, maybe he'll know someone whose grandpa's, uncle's, brother's friend will, have a bit of land that I could rent. And if not, I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. So I called Tom Musselman, and he was so excited. And, he said, oh, we've got some land, or there's people around here that we know. We would love to see this happen. It would be so great to see a young person start farming. Come on down. We'll drive around. We'll take a look at what's here, and, we'll find something that'll work. And I was amazed. It was actually the beginning of this feeling like there was this red carpet just rolling out in front of me. Like, once I made this decision that what I want to do is farm, everything just kind of rolled into place. Really, it was just that one phone call that led to the piece of land that I'm on now. And the piece of land that I'm on now was being leased by Tom and Mary Musselman from another set of landowners who are the Schneiders of the Schneider's Bush that I was walking in the day that I decided that this is what I wanted to do.
So as far as the landowner agreement, I decided to draft up something written, even though initially it was just such an amicable relationship I was developing with all the landowners. I thought it would be a good idea to write something down, to have a standard understanding of what our relationship was going to be for the next season. So I just asked the landowners what they would like to see on the agreement, and I drafted up something that talked about water use, access to the backyard, like times of day, and the fact that I would be giving them notice before going into their backyard, and just talked about release of liability if I tripped and fell. And it also was tenure. I said, could we have a 1-year agreement? So that in the middle of the season they wouldn't say, you know what, I actually really like sun tanning back here and I'd rather be in peace, so could we just call it? So they all agreed to 1 year. And what I actually found was they all, in the end, said, if you wanted to say like 3 years, 5 years, I'd rather this be long term. And that was really neat, because I was like, so would I. Because you're putting an investment in someone's backyard. All of the tilling, the initial transformation from lawn into usable soil, and all the nice layers of compost. You're putting so much time and love into each backyard. You want it to be more than a 1-year contract. So I drafted up something nice, and I got a friend of mine to look it over, and then I got a family friend that's a lawyer to draft up something nice, and then all the landowners signed it.
I think for us it felt like a win-win situation, because, as I said, the place was kind of growing wild. We weren't very good tenders of it. We always liked the idea of having sort of fresh food in the backyard. We just didn't want to grow it ourselves. So then when Erica came along, it seemed like the perfect combination for her to come and, for her to garden, for us to get some of the good produce. We also liked the fact that who she was as a person. So we liked, we were motivated by the fact that she seemed to be very professional and very caring and respectful, that she would be using the produce, that it would be organic, that she would be sharing it in terms of selling it at farmers markets, local farmers markets and local restaurants, as well as we would get to sample some of the goods. So it seemed like a good partnership and a good motivation that way. When
we got into it, my dad and I had sort of a 10-year arrangement that we would both stick it out for 10 years. I would farm it even if things weren't going so well, and he would stay here even if he wanted to move on. And as far as I know, that's still in place. The plan, we have briefly talked on it a few times over the years, and the plan is for me to eventually buy this land from him. The way it works right now is that I pay $800 a month towards the mortgage, and we're calculating it so that after 10 years or so, we're going to see how much I've paid off of the mortgage and how much he has and how much I would owe him, and we're working it out like that.
I had relocated to this area with a new job and rented while I waited to see if it was going to stick. When I decided that it would, I began to look for a permanent location, a home to buy. At that time, Tony was working full-time at a farm school in BC, and we went out to see him. His brother and I went out to see him. And we were sitting around the campfire one night, and I was saying, you know, I was thinking that I would stay in this geographic area. And then, I don't know how it happened, but suddenly we started talking about the possibility of, instead of me buying a semi in town and Tony doing who knows what, I would buy a farm. I would live in the house and Tony would farm the property. So it just kind of grew from there. We got pretty excited about the possibility. So that's what we ended up doing. We bought the place. I pretty much live in the house. He allows me back into the yard, you know, into the farmyard to be with the animals, but mostly it's his operation, and that's the nature of the partnership.
I mean, when I was looking to find a piece of land, part of what I was considering is just, you know, is this land itself going to be able to support the growing that I want to do? And then there were also questions of infrastructure. You know, do I have access to water? Do I have access to electricity? You know, am I going to be allowed to put up a greenhouse? Is there some sort of indoor space where I could put a cooler and have storage? But then I also wanted to make sure that I was in a place where there was going to be stability over time, where I wouldn't end up renting 1 year and sort of invest in the land and my infrastructure, only to find out that the whim of the landowner changed and they weren't interested in having me there anymore, and I'd have to, you know, sort of pick up and move and start all over again. The thing with having my contacts be Tom and Mary Musselman, who are this couple that I knew, felt very supported by, trusted, was that I felt like they were going to sort of, they would be willing to support me over time in terms of making it possible for me to continue being on this land. I actually wrote up a land use agreement that I wanted to sort of have negotiated and get signed. And it's just, I don't know, it's just not the way it panned out. I think the complications of having so many people involved in different aspects of this this land and sort of control over different parts. One person has control over the water and hydro supply, another person has control over the ownership, but another person has control over the use of the land surrounding it and the use of the barn space, which is shared. And I think it was just a little bit too complicated to put in writing. And I just deeply, maybe what's notable is that I really deeply trust the goodwill of the landowners and the Musselmans who lease the surrounding property.
Now the people who were farming for us, this farm, it was Reuben Musselman and his father Tom Musselman, they knew Angie, and Angie asked them if they had some land too, if they have land that she could start a market garden on. And their land is very hilly and it just didn't work out. And they knew we had this land, so they went to us, would you like to have a market garden? I said, sure, I love gardens. And I think it's important that people know where their food comes from. And what Angie's doing here is something special, because the people come out here, some of them, and it's almost a family. They become almost like a family. They come out to the farm to get their vegetables, and I think they seem to have such a good time when they come. One thing I don't think people understand is when you have a market garden, it's very important to have that soil just right. So she's very, very careful with the soil, that it's got the right nutrients in, and so instead of having soil that's depleted, we have soil that is fertile, as she calls her farm, you know. And to us, she's enriching the soil for us. So She's not going to leave it depleted at all. It'll be better.
So far, things have worked really well, and that's fantastic. You know, I've been able to negotiate with Peter, who rents the house, for water, for hydro. I've been able to negotiate to expand the amount of land that I'm using. I've been able to put up the infrastructure I want. There's lots of, and I feel like I have an easy relationship with the landowners and with the Musselmans who I was initially sort of subleasing from. But you know, having a piece of paper in my hand that said I have, you know, the right to farm here for X period of time, or if priorities change, I would have a certain number of months of notice, or something like that would you know, there would be something nice about having things in writing. And you know, the good old handshake method is great in some ways, but the Schneiders are older, and I don't know really what the priorities of their children are, who I assume would inherit this land eventually. So that's a bit of a wild card for me, and I've worried about that sometimes, thinking, yeah, I can trust Jane and Fred, but I don't really know their children all that well, and I don't know what they'll want to do with this land over time.
Well, I think pretty well that it's, I mean, the biggest thing is that it's been worry-free, you know, right from when the flyer came to meeting her, to her getting started, to increasing the amount of land that she was going to be farming. It's just been such an easygoing and basically worry-free relationship. We've never felt like never had any regrets. You know, we've never had to say, oh, I wish we'd never done this, or this was totally a bad idea, or this is the wrong person. It's been totally the opposite. Such a positive experience, and as I said, you know, we felt like it was win-win. We hope it was for Erica, and we just feel like, you know, just something where you're supporting something, you know, where you're supporting a neighbor, you're supporting growing locally, you're supporting local restaurants, you're supporting, you know, local farmers markets. You know, as I said, we're benefiting from the greening of our backyard with, you know, more composters and rain barrels, and, you know, these very enthusiastic young people who just come and take care of our backyard. I mean, we haven't found any downsides.
Just making that connection, getting to know someone that lived half a block away for the last decade was a baby success in itself. And I really felt like I was onto something good when I got such a positive feedback right away. You know, I thought, okay, so this isn't just me being totally kooky. This is something my community actually wants and needs.
Being that it's a family operation and I am sort of renting the farm from my dad, it has allowed me to think of it as a long-term project, especially because I do plan on buying this property one day.
This is perhaps a slightly different relationship because it's not landowner and tenant. It's not property owner and farmer, it's father and son. What has worked well is that we have committed and we have a relationship and an arrangement where we are each contributing toward the upkeep and the success of the operation and the farm and the property. You know, what has been a good business model, I almost have to ask you to talk to Tony about that. It hasn't been my goal to be a farmer, to become a farmer. It has always been my goal to support my son. One of the things I find quite interesting and makes me quite proud is that he's making such a contribution to the agricultural community and to the community of food as well. I remember one day I came home from work and there's a school bus in the driveway, and I noticed that most of the people here on the property were in their 20s, and on my way down the driveway I met a woman who was I would say about 40, had a clipboard in her hand, and she said, "Oh, you must be the property owner." And I thought, well, yeah, okay, I guess I am. She said, "I can't tell you how happy we are to be here, because Tony is making such a contribution to this program that we're running and teaching people about farming, organic farming, and sustainable farming." So as a landowner, property owner, I guess is what I am in this relationship, I found that you know, situations like that add a new dimension to what Tony is doing, not only creating a place for himself as a farmer, but helping others to get into the field and to learn from his experience.
There are many reasons why new farmers have difficulty accessing land. They include unchecked urban sprawl, land speculation, outdated taxation and zoning laws, and a lack of policy to protect productive farmland. We need to work simultaneously on many fronts to make farmland accessible for new farmers so that we can all benefit from their work. In the meantime, more and more visionary new farmers and landowners are creating their own homegrown solutions. Some examples of these solutions have been featured in this film. We hope that stories like these will inspire more new farmers. We also hope it will inspire policymakers and others to work towards long-term land access solutions. Everdale is a teaching farm located in southern Ontario. We provide hands-on solution-based food and farming education to build and engage healthy local communities. Everdale's Farmers Growing Farmers is a suite of programs designed to provide new farmers with the training they need to be profitable contributors to a local food system. Our training programs are offered in two streams: learning food growing skills and developing a farm vision and plan.